The Babylon Project was our last best hope for Scott. A self-contained podcast, 1 hour long, located on the internet. A place of fun and discussion for Babylon 5 fans everywhere. A shining beacon in cyberspace, all alone in the night. It was the dawn of the 20th anniversary of Babylon 5, the year the Great War to free Bab 5 came upon us all. This is the story of the last of the Babylon podcasts. The year is 2014. The name of the place is the Babylon Project Podcast. The host of the Babylon Project podcast, Jim Arrowwood and Raul Wybera.
Hi there, Babylon 5 fans. This is Raul and Jim back with another episode of the Babylon Project podcast. How are you doing tonight, Jim?
I'm doing great right now. Got storms coming in tomorrow, though.
Oh, we've been having them all, well, for the past week in and out. I got the weed and feed for the lawn, and look at, you've got to put that on the grass while it's wet, but it needs at least 24 to 48 hours or it just washes off into the gutter. Right. It keeps raining. So I'm finally over the torn rotator cuff. I'm finally over the busted up MCL in the knee. I'm finally over the torn up back and getting stuff back online. And now the weather's not going to cooperate with me.
Yeah.
But that's okay. It gives my son some chance to do some more lawn mowing.
There you go.
Oh.
So.
I think while it's on my head, we should probably answer one of the questions that has come up on occasion. What is this last best hope for Scott in our opening monologue from my lovely and talented wife?
What is that all about?
Okay, for those of you who are not familiar with a show called The Sci-Fi Diner, it's hosted by Scott Herzog and Miles McLaughlin and M. And Jim and I broke into the diner, held Scott hostage until he promised to watch Babylon 5, and we gave a general overview of the show.
Yes. And he has since commenced watching.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And we owe Scott a debt of gratitude. Sci-Fi Diner, that hijack, was the kickoff, essentially, for the Babylon Project podcast.
Yeah, the inspiration to get us started.
And I was amazed to find out it is, the third most downloaded show from the diner?
Last I heard, we were the third most downloaded episode out of over 200 episodes that they have recorded.
Number 2 was, I forgot, what was it? One of the video games that was made into a movie, which is not a genre that I'm real picky of, but the gal on it apparently was amazing.
Right.
And, of course, number 1, we have absolutely no chance of catching up with ever. End of story. We will never beat Amanda Tapping, the Amanda Tapping interview.
Never, never.
I will lose all faith in the male gender if we were to ever even come close to the Amanda Tapping interview. So, anyway, that is the story why we've dedicated at least this first season to Scott, and this podcast being his last best hope.
Yes.
All right, tonight, Parliament of Dreams. I think this is one of everyone's favorite episodes. Certainly one of mine.
Yes. And as far as I'm concerned, in the series, it's the first of the best episodes.
That's the best way I can think of putting it, Jim.
Yes. Not that Babylon 5 did any really bad episodes. Most of them are, the ones that a person could say are bad are acceptable, but this is the very first one that really moved forward.
Calling Parliament of Dreams the first of the best is probably a great way of starting it. I would agree. Even episodes were a little bit critical that we might say aren't our favorite.
Mm-hmm.
Babylon 5's mediocre shows are still better than your typical series good show.
Yes. Now this was the 5th episode. We've moved a little bit away from exposition now, and we're getting more into story.
This does do a lot in regard of introducing the arc. In fact, this would be a good time, Jim, for you to give us a summary of the episode.
Okay, hold on to your hats.
Archive. Access. Initiated.
EarthGov has suggested that Babylon 5 host a week-long celebration where each race of people on board demonstrate their culture's dominant belief system in order to promote better understanding and to promote intergalactic peace. Needless to say, this is going to cause considerable problems for security. The show opens with Garibaldi confronting an alien who is bringing a ceremonial dagger onto the station, which is in violation of regulations. He confiscates the weapon and also notices someone he recognizes entering the station. He excuses himself to work on other duties. In the meantime, G'Kar is in his quarters preparing his dinner while singing a Narn song. Just as he sits down at his table, he is interrupted by Tupari, a courier from Narn with a message for him. G'Kar takes the message crystal and begins to have his dinner, but decides instead to look at the message, as he was informed that it was urgent. The message is from a former rival, Durog, who informs G'Kar that he will soon be dead. Durog further informs G'Kar that he has hired a member of the Thentamakur, or the Assassin's Guild, and that G'Kar himself will also be dead in 48 hours. Immediately after he views the message, G'Kar's new aide, Natoth, reports for duty. Sinclair and the command staff attend the Centauri celebration, which involves a huge party with much feasting, drinking, dancing, and music. Almost everyone is having a good time. Veer explains that the celebration began during a conflict between the Centauri and another race called the Zon. After a battle, the Centauri would count their survivors and celebrate life. Ivanova asks Londo about the statues that are displayed on the tables, and he explains that they are Centauri household gods. He further explains that the Centauri have many gods for all occasions. Quite inebriated at this point, Londo gets up on the table and passes out. Veer informs everyone that Londo has become one with his inner self. Sinclair and Garibaldi, apparently having enough of the celebration, leave the room. When they are alone, Garibaldi informs him that the passenger he recognized entering the station was Catherine Sakai, with whom Sinclair has had an on-and-off relationship with. Sinclair tells him that he doesn't want to see her. Sinclair and Catherine meet in a corridor and have a tension-filled exchange. It seems that they get together about every 3 years and rekindle their relationship, only to have another falling out, and one of them leaves the other. Vowing not to let this happen again, Sinclair offers to take Catherine out for dinner and give her a tour of the station, and she hesitantly accepts. A suspicious G'Kar questions Natoth about how she came to be on the station at that particular time. She tells him that if she wanted him dead, he would be. She also tells him if that there were actually an assassin present, he would have received a warning sign of the presence of a death blossom. Later, G'Kar awakens to find that a black flower has been placed on a pillow next to him while he slept. G'Kar again confronts Natoth about the circumstances surrounding her being assigned to be his aide. His former aide, Kodath, was killed in an all-too-convenient airlock accident. Natoth suggests contacting station security, but Jakar cannot divulge the nature of his problems with Durag because it would put his current situation in jeopardy. He sends Natoth to find Tupari. In the meantime, Delenn also receives a new aide. He is Lanier, a young and naive new arrival. Delenn informs him that he must never tell anyone about her position as a member of the Grey Council and not to use her title, Satai. Sinclair and Catherine arrive for their dinner date at the Fresh Air restaurant. They start out verbally sparring with each other about their past relationship and find that it is heading in the same direction as it always seems to. Finally, they end up laughing about the past, vowing once again not to repeat the past mistakes. Jakar meets with Nagrath to hire a bodyguard. He is introduced to a very large and imposing figure that will provide services. Everyone attends the Minbari ceremony that is dark and talks a lot about death. It is a rebirth ceremony in which one eats their past troubles in the form of a fruit. Sinclair and Delenn exchange a long, soulful look. Delenn concludes the ceremony by saying, "And so it begins." Back in his quarters, Jakar is very upset that his bodyguard didn't attend the Minbari celebration with him. He complains to Natoth, who tells him that his bodyguard is in the other room. When Jakar attempts to confront him about his absence, it is discovered that the bodyguard has been murdered. Later, Catherine is working on another project for her job, which is doing planetary surveys in search of natural resources to be used by Earth companies. She finishes a proposal and is informed by a pair representing a company that her last job has netted her a very large sum of money. She is quite overwhelmed. Natoth brings Tupari into Jakar's quarters. He asks where he got the data crystal. He is informed that the crystal came from Natoth's father. Jakar's suspicions about Natoth are piqued. Sinclair attempts to relax in his quarters when Catherine arrives to celebrate her recently found good fortune. Trying to avoid a repeat of past mistakes, they talk about being over each other, but both admit that they are indeed not ready to end their relationship. With his suspicions getting the best of him, Jakar contacts the homeworld and demands that Natoth be recalled. The official agrees to bring her home and then apologizes that a courier that was sent was killed in an accident and that another would be dispatched immediately. Confused, Jakar says that the courier has arrived. As he turns towards Tupari, Jakar is stunned with a weapon Tupari is holding. Later, Jakar is being held in restraints called pain givers. If he approaches Tupari while wearing these, he will experience pain or even death if he gets too close. Tupari informs Jakar that according to the contract, he is to know pain, he is to know fear, and finally he is to know death. Jakar offers Tupari a large bribe to give up his contract, but Tupari is unable to accept the bribe because it would dishonor him and all of the Assassin's Guild, and then Tupari himself would be hunted. Natoth enters the scene claiming to be Tupari's backup, and she begins to kick Jakar while he lies on the deck in an attempt to convince Tupari to trust her. Natoth's ploy does not work, but Jakar rises and overwhelms Tupari. Jakar then complains that the beating she gave him was quite painful. She explains that she had to make it appear real in order to disable the pain givers, thus proving her loyalty to Jakar. A short time after, Jakar and Natoth see Tupari off the station. Jakar tells him that he has been unconscious for a long time, and the contract is not only in default, but Jakar has deposited a large sum into Tupari's account, making it appear that he accepted a bribe. Tupari departs the station knowing that the guild will now be hunting him to preserve their honor. Sinclair escorts Catherine off the station while she leaves temporarily to do another survey mission. She makes sure that he understands that she is not leaving for good and will soon be back. Later, it is Sinclair's turn to demonstrate the dominant belief system of Earth. He has summoned representatives from all the belief systems on the planet and introduces each representative by their name and what they represent to the assembled ambassadors, thus proving that Earth is made up of a very diverse culture that hold many beliefs sacred.
Initiating plot analysis.
All right. Thank you, Jim, for that summary.
You got it. So we've got some new cast and some guest stars to talk about today.
That is correct. I think we have the rest of the season 1 cast introduced at this point.
Yep.
Primarily Lanier,
Yes.
played by Bill Mumy. Danger,
Yes.
Will Robinson. Danger. The same, one and same.
Oh, yes. And then Natoth, played by Caitlin Brown, who is a much-loved character and unfortunately wasn't with the show for long.
She had an allergic reaction to the makeup and the prosthetics.
Mm-hmm.
And she really did not want to leave the show. But they did have to replace the actress playing Natoth in season 2.
Yes.
And last but not least, Catherine Sakai, played by Julia Nixon.
Yes. An interesting, juxtaposition with the love interest of Sinclair's in The Gathering.
Indeed, and we'll definitely be talking about that. Catherine Sakai is another favorite character of the series.
Well, she's a very strong character, independent, and has her own job, and as a matter of fact, on one assignment made more money probably than Sinclair does in a year.
Probably in several years. In fact, this is the episode where that happens. Guest stars, we have Thomas Kopach, and I'm not sure if that's pronounced Kopach or Kopache, playing Tupari.
Yeah, probably Kopache. Yes, Tupari.
Who is, well, at the risk of jumping ahead, the antagonist of this particular episode.
He's the bad guy.
Though he does a great job of fighting it.
Yeah. So Raul, why is Catherine one of your favorite characters?
Well, and it'll be a little bit of a jump ahead here. Smart, beautiful, and I don't just mean physical beauty. I mean just the whole character and person, the way she comes off, her attitude, everything about her is beautiful, confident. It's almost the archetypical strong woman that it just lots and lots of appeal.
Yes.
Sinclair is a very strong male lead, and it would take one heck of a woman and one heck of an actress to be able to really stand up with him as an equal. And the Catherine Sakai character really does that. Carolyn didn't do that so much.
No, she wasn't right for Sinclair. She was not a bad character, but Sinclair needed a strong alter ego.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and she provided it.
Yes.
She very much provided it. And, in some ways, now, Anthea doesn't necessarily agree with me. She's come out, and you probably won't as well. Like I said, you might not agree with me on it, but I think the popularity of Catherine Sakai was a big part of Sinclair's popularity as well. There was such a strong chemistry between them as a team. There was a unity between them and a chemistry that just made both characters bigger and stronger than they would have stood alone. But that's, like I said, that's just my...
Yeah, well, my point of view there would be, prior to doing this podcast, I was more of a casual watcher, and she was just someone, her and Sinclair were just two ships passing in the night. She was a character that was there for a couple of episodes and then not there anymore.
But remember, she became more important toward the end of the series, especially once the engagement and everything was announced.
Right.
Now, I will say this, in defense of my position, and I know folks have heard me mention this before, Catherine Sakai was such a popular character. The novel, To Dream in the City of Sorrows, is official canon, and it was written specifically to close her arc. Uh-huh. So it finishes Catherine Sakai's story, and it starts Marcus Cole's story.
Mm-hmm.
And I will leave more in-depth discussion for that until we get further along into the Rangers and Marcus.
Mm-hmm.
But she's just always been one of my favorite characters.
Okay.
And I've already mentioned the final. I'm going to leave my third point my third point to bring up before we just get into character discussion. I'm going to leave it till after years because not a surprise to me, we actually had the same item there.
Right.
So your first point.
I found it strange that the various races also don't have different belief systems as we do here on Earth, with the exception of the Narn. But, we have tons.
The Narn was sort of a odd amalgam. There was almost some Buddhist aspects of it.
Well,
in the way Jaquan was not so, and they really didn't go into the Narn belief system in this episode.
No.
But Jaquan was sort of like the Buddha in a way, laying out their basic philosophy.
Right.
And a lot of the meditative aspects of it.
Right. Well, the Centauri, they had their household gods. They had a whole plethora of deities, but that was everybody's thing, kind of like the Greeks did, the Romans did. The Minbari seemed to be monotheistic in their beliefs.
Pantheism. Everything was God.
Ah, okay, yeah, I can see that.
It was everything is God. It's shades of Hinduism, actually, in a lot of ways. That the universe is on the path of discovering itself. And we'll we'll definitely get more into these as we progress.
Right. So, and it's really too bad that Natoth couldn't stay around. She was a great character that kept Jakar very grounded.
Absolutely. The lady playing her in the second season was good, but Caitlin Brown really defined the role.
Oh, yes. Especially that scene where Jakar woke up with the death blossom next to him and then asked Natoth how this got into my bed. And Natoth says, well, it's not my job to keep track of what goes into your bed.
Yeah, absolutely. And, of course, we've got that final scene of the show.
Yeah, let's save that one till the end.
We will definitely save that one till the end. We'll just say that folks, Jim and I both thought it was just pure brilliance.
Yes.
So, characters, we talked a little bit about Catherine.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go ahead and flesh her out, since she was such a popular character. It looks like Garibaldi's known Catherine as well as Sinclair from way back. And It probably connects, in fact, I know it does from reading the book. It connects back to their shared and the comic books as well. It connects back to the shared Martian history. She's learned Tennyson, it seems.
Yes.
I like that question. Are you the idle king or the gray spirit?
Yeah. We find meaning where we find it. Or we find meaning, what was it? We find meaning where we can.
Yes. And what's funny is that really is that's almost a little bit of it's not almost, it's a whole lot of foreshadowing. Is he the idle king or is he the gray spirit? I like that, specifically the gray spirit. When we see his story arc unfold, it turns out he's actually both. Something that puzzled me on this was, as I've read history and texts on historical figures, especially military, it always seems that grounding in poetry, classic literature, even the Bible, is very important to military leaders. So why wouldn't that have been? Why would it surprise Catherine that Sinclair listened to Tennyson? No idea, actually. I think in this particular case, it's just a real reflection of the depth, and there very much is a strong element of truth there. Mm-hmm. For the man or woman who is a soldier, there needs to be, at least there should be, for the moral soldier. It's necessary, but you need that grounding.
Yes.
You need that grounding of your faith. You need that grounding of your beliefs, and whether it's in philosophy or poetry or the Bible or your other religions, that centering is a necessary part of the soldier's life. That there's something greater. You're serving something greater.
Well, yes. It gives you something to fight for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Catherine. Back with Catherine. Like I said, they go way back. It seems that they're together, every 3 years or so?
Yeah, that's what they said.
And they break up, and one's not available, or the other's not available, or they end up catching up on old times, going out to dinner, and ending up in bed together.
Which is the beginning of the next breakdown.
But rest assured, folks, this one will be different.
Well, they decided that it was going to be different.
Mm-hmm. Now, you picked my thoughts on Catherine. What of yours?
Well, as I said, prior to this latest watching, I've been a casual viewer, never gave much thought to her until recently. And then, as I said earlier, I find her to be a very strong female character, independent, and she can make it on her own. She doesn't have to depend on anybody for anything. She's really moving forward and doing well.
Now, when we get toward the end of the series, there'll be a few things that come through toward the end of the series. I'm going to have to be careful. I don't want to spoil necessarily the book, but I am going to give some good teasers as to where it goes from there. I think mm-hmm. I think you'll find it an enjoyable nudge to reading the book if you haven't already.
I'd love to. I can't get it on...
You will not be able to find it as an ebook.
Right.
It was written too long ago, and it's something of a niche book, so about the only way you will find it is in a paperback.
Yeah, I'll just have to bite the bullet and get on Amazon and order a copy of it somewhere.
And for me, actually, I've always had a fondness for reading books in book form rather than an e-reader. There's something about the touch and even the smell of an old bookstore. The flipping of the pages, the rustle of the paper, that sort of a comfort, sort of a security blanket for me.
Yeah, I'm pretty much reading everything electronically these days.
All right, Natoth, we have to bring her up. We've already discussed her, another fan favorite.
Yes, she's most definitely another very strong character. Brings in a little bit of a comic relief every now and then. And, as I said, the actress, it is really too bad that she couldn't stay for the whole series.
Right. And, you mentioned that she kept Jakar grounded. Not only is that very true, she's probably one of the most level-headed characters in the series.
Yes. Now, she'd have been destined to be ambassador had anything ever happened to Jakar.
Yep. Now, for Caitlin Brown fans, I believe she does come back as actually a human in an episode a few seasons down.
Yeah, you're right. I remember that. I don't remember what episode or what her character was, but...
The title escapes me, but it's she's Captain Sheridan's attorney.
Okay. Yeah, I look forward to that.
Yep. Yeah. We do also get some reference to Natoth for going forward in the series, even after the character drops out of the main episodes. You will find some references as to what happens with her.
Right.
But yeah, very much a fan favorite, very resourceful, thinks very fast on her feet.
Yes.
And I think she's the one who I kind of like to think she's the one who helped come up with the payback for Tupari once they foiled his little plot.
Yeah, that would make sense. Jakar was too busy trying to avoid getting killed.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Now, our last character for the main cast that's introduced is Lanier, and he actually does make it through the entire series.
Yes. And this is another character, as I've mentioned before, just like Veer, who shows a lot of growth over time.
Indeed, an extreme amount of growth.
Yes. He comes on the show completely naive, doesn't know anything, and then as time goes on, he and Veer become friends, and it's just really neat to watch him grow.
Right. I love the initial refusing to meet her eyes, would only look down at the ground with her. And her line, "I cannot have an aide who will not look up. He will be forever walking into walls."
Yes.
And we find out, I guess, is it in the 4th season or the 3rd season, where she got that line.
Uh-oh.
It's her carrying the circle from her mentor to her mentoring Lanier.
Okay.
And there's just an elegance. There's an elegance to the relationship between Lanier and Delenn that is just wonderful.
Yes. So in other words, Delenn was passing on her learning.
Mm-hmm. And Lanier, I don't know that we've seen an older male Minbari yet, but Lanier's head crest is a little smoother, a little shorter. When you see the male Minbari, the older, like when we first see Naroon,
right?
The crest is huge, it's wild, it's out there, almost like Einstein's hair all over the place.
Well, I wonder if that isn't something that has to do with the caste system.
I know that had been theorized, but apparently it's related, from what I've learned over the time, and from what I've heard over time, it's more related to age than anything. Particularly, remember, when we go further down the road and we see some of the older men from the priest caste, they've got the larger full-blown crest as well.
Okay. Oh.
And Dukat, he's...
Well, he's Dukat, for crying out loud.
Mm-hmm. So it's more of the age, and just on, since we do know it is bone now, the other thing that we find out, the women will carve theirs, the way human women style their hair, Minbari women carve and shape their bone crests.
Yes. I'm laughing because of styling hair. That's going to be funny later on. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. We're not gonna blow it for them yet.
No, gosh. Not yet.
Let's just say that Delenn has a few changes in store.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Anything else on characters that you want to bring up?
No, not at this time.
All right. We'll go ahead and consider that a wrap on the characters. Let's go ahead and talk about the main thrust of this episode. And, the shows have often an A story and a B story.
Yes.
It's kind of hard to tell which one's the A story and which one's the B story in this episode tonight, because in a lot of ways, they're both A stories.
I do have to agree. I would call the Catherine and Sinclair storyline A prime.
And then we've already mentioned the assassination attempt for Jakar.
That's B.
But it's the main focus of another aspect of the story. And then we've got the religious ceremonies. Yes. The idea being to present the dominant belief systems of your home world.
And that's just plain A.
And that's, just plain A. Now, we don't see the Narn, as we've already mentioned, but it won't be very long. We'll learn a little bit more about the Narn
Yes.
religion. Primarily, it sounds like they've got several different religions, but the one we see the most is the followers of Jaquan and the Book of Jaquan.
Yes.
And we'll wait for that until we get to a little further along.
Yep.
But the Centauri ceremony.
Yes.
As you mentioned, they're polytheistic.
Yes.
In nature. And I tend to be a little bit more of an analyst of this sort of thing, since I'm a lay apologist. Christian apologetics is one of my areas of study, so I tend to be a little more technical, detailed in it. The Centauri are polytheistic in nature, but they still worship the Maker. Yes. And when you look at the different religions, what they refer to as the Maker religions, that tends to be a monotheistic creator. So technically, if you looked at Christianity, that would be considered a Maker religion. Right. The Centauri have that weird combination of the two. The Drazi, I know, are Maker. When the way they talk about Drashala. But what's interesting is, in a way, as Roman natured as the Centauri seem to the way they parallel so much of the Roman Empire, that actually is sort of a parallel as well, at least for the later imperial Rome, because you had polytheistic Rome with the Christian influence, and there was a lot of mishmashing of one, and it kind of went both ways, but one absuming or subsuming the other, as it were.
Right.
And, in particular, like how a lot of Christian holidays came about by, especially after Constantine, those religions being absorbed. So there is a Roman, there is that Roman parallel that actually continues there. We do get a couple of the gods. Lee, the goddess of passion.
Right.
You need to look at her very carefully.
Yes.
And we'll get a little bit more into that. We'll get a little more into that as we go along. But yeah, how did you notice? Oh, what's the way to put it, Jim? Tentacles. I
would say I don't know what to say.
Well, you had put it one way. You'd mentioned, you noted it as a bit of a hermaphrodite.
Yes. Well, but that's for their god, apparently. For their goddess of passion. Right.
One other of the gods that was introduced that really is worth mentioning is the god of the underworld, Morgoth.
Yes.
Lord of the Rings, that little tip of the hat there to Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Because especially if you've read the Silmarillion, Morgoth is the Satan character from the Silmarillion. Sauron was simply a servant of his. And did you notice of the non-Centauri at that celebration, who was the one person that was actually having fun?
Oh, Ivanova. She was hysterical.
Yep. She was definitely enjoying herself.
Oh yeah, behind that exterior of hers, she's a party animal all the way.
Oh yeah. And I loved. I'm sorry.
Oh, and what a party it was!
Feast, yeah. Sinclair described it beforehand. Feast, purge, feast, purge, feast, purge, going on for days.
Oh yeah.
And purgatorium. The Romans throwing up so they can feast some more. Another one of those Roman parallels.
Yes. Yeah, that was very Romanesque.
Yep.
Romanesque? Where did that come from?
And Delin was in a state of shock the whole time.
Yeah, she's not used to that kind of chaos, I don't think. Val Toooooo.
Oh gosh, Val Toooooo. Yeah, the quotes. Yes. Some of the best quotes of that episode were in that Centauri ritual.
Oh, geez. When Malari jumped up on the table and in purple I'm ravishing, and oh jeez.
Very cute for Minbari.
Yes. And you're cute too, but in an annoying sort of way.
Yeah. And Veer, I think Veer had the clincher. He has become one with his inner self.
He passed out.
Right.
And that too. Yes. But it didn't seem to faze anybody else in the place. They just all seemed to take it in stride, and Sinclair
for the Centauri, it was like, that's your objective.
Yeah. And Sinclair just kind of disappeared.
Back to our Catherine Sakai story again there, huh?
Yes. Yes. Didn't you like the way, though, that Londo threw that bread at the commander of the station?
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
I couldn't believe that.
I know they're required to follow the script precisely.
Uh-huh.
But within the following of that script, I cannot help but wonder just how much Peter Jurasik went wild.
Oh, yeah.
I do understand that some of Delen's shock, or some, let me rephrase this. Some of the shock that Mira Furlan portrayed through Delen wasn't entirely acted. I think there was a little bit of real, from what I understand, there was a little bit of real, oh my gosh, what is going on here?
Oh, boy.
And remember, she was a recent immigrant to the U.S. So.
Oh, and you know what? When I was in university, we had a recent teacher show up at college, and she was from Germany, and I'll tell you what, she knew absolutely nothing about our American sense of humor. And her and I, we didn't get along very well at first. And as years went on and she lived here longer and longer and started to kind of understand where we were coming from, she was actually appreciating it.
Remember, she, for a long time, depended on Bill Mumy to pick her up and drive her onto set.
Oh yeah, I would.
They were commuter buddies, so she didn't even drive for a very long time.
Yeah.
Now, you contrast that, and I think this is why they left off the Narn ceremonies. Mm-hmm. You contrast that with the Minbari ceremony.
Oh yes.
And I know the pantheism is very Hindu, but the ascetic nature is almost Buddhist. And it's very ceremonial, very formal. And this was what they call the rebirth ceremony.
Yeah.
And remember, we will hear about the rebirth ceremony again in season 3.
Yeah. It seemed to center around death. It was very dark.
It was darn near celebrating death.
Yes. And, well, Chrissy was watching it with me earlier, and she says, that's creepy.
And you look at the way Delenn would say, death.
Yes.
I mean, it wasn't just death. It was death.
Mm-hmm. And then the way that scene was lit. Did you notice that?
The kind of washed out lighting for it?
Well, actually, the lighting was coming more from directly above.
Uh-huh.
Causing shadows on the face.
Exactly. Yeah, that's...
Yeah, and, you know, it was subtle. It was not horribly right out there. There
was
subtle,
a little more stark contrast between the lights and grays. It just kind of gave a washed out feeling to the whole thing.
Yes.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And then Delenn closes it with the phrase, and so it begins.
And so what begins?
Well, that's one of the big unanswered questions of this episode. But we do hear that phrase again later from Kosh.
Yes.
And it's sort of the theme for the season.
Well, and the thing is now, Jeff Sinclair was supposed to be the commander of the last commander of Babylon 5.
Correct.
Okay. They did not know that the actor was not going to stay through the second season, right?
I don't know if by this point whether or not Joe Straczynski had made that decision or not.
Okay,
I don't know. I know this is only the 5th episode in, but I didn't think it was that far in.
Okay.
That they decided, okay, we're going to have to. The story started writing its own shit, and that's another thing that kind of happened. In addition to Michael O'Hare's health problems that kept him from being back in the show, which we didn't find out till long afterwards, but the direction the series developed was taking a very different direction.
Well,
so
yes.
it could very well be just a matter of that direction.
However, okay, the next commander, Bruce Boxleitner, Commander Sheridan, and Delenn do get married. Okay, now if you recall, Catherine Sakai said somebody got married.
Or someone might have gotten married, depending on how serious of a look was exchanged.
Oh, there was a serious look exchange, both directions. And also a very sensual way that Delenn ate that fruit.
Yeah, definitely a PG-13 moment there.
Yes.
That kind of strikes me as well. This was a marriage ceremony when the focus of the ceremony is about death. Not death, but death.
Yes. And rebirth.
You just kind of killed my joke there. It's like, okay, marriage, death. Okay, yeah, you wear black suits to both.
Well, my wife might be listening to this.
Oh, gosh. Well, I think this might be a good time, just for my continued good health, for us to move to that B story, perhaps.
Sure.
Namely, Jakar and the assassination attempt and Natath.
Yes.
Oh, gosh. The pighead and the crawfish, the one that kept trying to creep away.
Yeah.
That was actually when he told it to stay put, that was actually one of the few ad-libs that ever actually made it into the series.
It was a good one.
And the song, I think you had mentioned in one of our discussions off show, the So Many Fishies song. I just love that one.
Yes.
Did you know? I thought that was actually from some musical for the longest time. That wasn't. It was actually an original song that Chris Franke wrote for Babylon 5. And it will come back in and out throughout the series. You hear Jakar singing it more than once.
Wow. Well, I don't know about the lyrics, but the tune is very familiar. But it could be just simply because certain progressions in there are being quoted, or whether intentional or accidental. It sounds kind of like a circus song.
Actually, what Joe Straczynski wanted was something that would put you in mind of Gilbert and Sullivan. And he turned Frankie loose on this, and this is what they got back.
Okay. Well, yeah, it's definitely Gilbert and Sullivan-esque.
This is an area where I definitely have to bow to your knowledge and profession.
Yeah. Well, and even the lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a neat song.
Yeah. The other part that played a big role in this was the Thinker-Makur, which was the Narn Assassins Guild.
Yes.
They leave a death blossom to allow the target to get their affairs in order.
Yeah, and this is the only time in the series we see this, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I will say this, they must be mighty confident in their abilities if they're going to give the target advance warning.
Well, he had to, that was part of the requirement. He was to know fear, he was to know pain, and he finally was to know death.
At the appointed hour.
Correct. But he needed to know fear because that was part of the contract. Now, if the contract had said he's not to see it coming, then he probably wouldn't have done any warning.
Yeah, I don't. But that was something that Natath had mentioned. Have you received the death blossom? Something that they always did.
Okay.
Now,
That's true.
and remember, Jakar had 2 prior assassination attempts, but never from the Thingamacur.
Mm-mm.
I mean, she was the one with the knowledge about how they operated.
Yes.
Oh, and speaking of death blossoms and so many fishies, when Jakar was asleep, did you listen to the music?
Yes. Do, 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 do. Yes, it was there.
They turned it into a lullaby.
Yes.
It was hilarious. The first couple of times that I watched the show, I completely missed it. It was only when I watched it for this podcast that I caught that little bit of a joke.
Oh, see, and I think I've always subconsciously known that, but it never, being significant never struck me. It was just kind of like, okay, we're on to another scene. Let's just use the same music.
Uh-huh. Yeah, what did you think about Jakar's bodyguard?
Yeah, quite a brute, but I'll tell you what, when Jakar went in there to chew him out for not being at the Minbari ceremony and then smacked him on the shoulder and he fell off the chair, I just about fell off my chair.
Oh, gosh, I lost it. I did. I can't help but wonder, did Jakar get his money back?
I seriously doubt it. You think McGrath would give money back?
Probably not. I have to say, I did like that character. I wish they had kept McGrath around. In the investigation, though, it's funny. And you had mentioned it with Natoth about Jakar's interest in human women.
Yes.
They keep playing that gag throughout.
Well, I don't
Hot
know if I
pink.
want to know. Yeah, hot pink. I don't know if I want to know how that works out.
God. Yeah, they're questions that are better off. I will say this. I doubt it has anything to do with breeding Narn telepaths.
Yeah, well, that's for sure.
Oh, gosh. And, okay. Speaking of, on the assassination, let's get out of naughty territory here.
Yes.
Earth-style glasses?
Yeah, I don't know. You liked it.
Yeah, it was just so out of character. And it was just one of those silly moments. For me, it worked.
Okay.
As a gag.
As a gag, I'll give you that. But it didn't make logical sense to me. Why would someone from Narn that needs visual aid, why would they have something that was designed for a human head?
I mean, I could see using some sort of optic, but yeah.
Or did he get a pair of +5s from the Zocalo or something? I don't know.
Who knows? Obviously, though, in doing it, they planned it well enough to make sure that the arms would stay on their more or less earless head.
Oh, yeah.
It was just hilarious.
Yeah, it didn't make logical sense to me. It was a good gag when he took off the glasses after reading the edict of how things were supposed to go. But as a gag, it worked. Logically, it didn't.
And you will know pain, you will know fear, and you will die at the required hour.
Yes.
Great line.
Yep.
Natoth's finding him. I just, like, this is one of the reasons I like the character, just the resourcefulness. And she explains how she found him.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not, it's not just a wild card that's pulled out of the air where she just kind of shows up.
Right.
She was able to do her detective work, and she did it quickly.
Yeah, she figured it out and moved in and saved the day as far as Jakar was concerned.
And apparently she quite enjoyed doing the saving.
Oh, yes.
As she was beating Jakar to his next incarnation, as she put it.
Yes. Stopping just that short of finishing the job. But of course, that's what she had to do to break the pain givers so he would have a chance to defend himself.
And as Jakar said, but you enjoyed that.
Yes.
There was just a great chemistry. There's just a great chemistry between those two characters that really was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Real good writing. Good writing, too.
Okay, before we hit the last scene, do you want to do our likes and dislikes?
Sure.
You've heard a lot about my likes. My dislikes for this episode, not a single thing.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot come up with a dislike for this one.
Yeah. I don't have anything there that particularly offended me. I know I mentioned the glasses a few minutes ago, but I wasn't offended by that. As a matter of fact, I never gave it much thought until I started watching closer.
It's more of a facepalm.
Yes, exactly.
It's more of a facepalm moment.
Yeah. I really enjoyed everything. I loved Jakar singing while he fixed his dinner, and the way he talked to the crawfish. I like the fact, yeah, I love the fact that Catherine is independent and a strong character, which was something that was needed at the time, but wasn't very common. Not near as common as it is today. And the same goes for Natoth. And I really, really love the way the humor gets spread around with the cast. You know, for instance, Garibaldi starts it right off. A guy's trying to bring on a knife onto the station, and this guy's saying, well, I'm the this and I'm the that, and he's blowing all this steam about how great he is, and Garibaldi says, I don't care if you're the Easter Bunny.
Yep.
And then he tells the guy, okay, I'll tell you what, I'll attach this magnetically to the outside of the station, and if you can go out there and get it without a spacesuit, you can bring it on the station.
Yeah.
So,
oh, gosh. It really was great.
Yeah, the sense of humor gets spread around everywhere. So should we talk about that last scene?
That final scene.
Yes.
Is utterly, utterly brilliant.
Yes, it is. I can't think of anything that touches me on a deeper level than that particular scene where Sinclair is introducing all the various belief systems who are standing together in a line. There's no fighting going on. There's not even any dirty looks.
Mm-hmm. And one particular point of that, he specifically had, you'll notice there was a Muslim imam standing next to the Jewish priest.
Exactly. Yes.
That was not an accident. Straczynski specifically had that arrangement.
Yeah. And it was perfect. It's perfect. And you go all the way down the line, and it boggles my mind at least, the number of different beliefs there are. I found it kind of interesting, I guess, that he started out with an atheist.
Joe Straczynski is atheist. He was originally, he was, and this is going to, all right, just from the perspective of full disclosure for our fans. Okay. You're agnostic. I am Protestant, fairly down. I've mentioned already that, I'm a Christian apologist.
Right.
Joe Straczynski is atheist, and you notice the Catholic priest was second. He went to atheism from, I believe, studying for theology as a Catholic himself.
Oh, no kidding.
In reflection of that, Sinclair is Roman Catholic.
Right.
As far as his theology. So there's little bits of symbolism there in that arrangement.
Ah. Is Sheridan also Catholic?
It doesn't say. I don't think it's okay. I get the feeling from like some of his conversations with Brother Theo. I think there might be some implication that he might be more Protestant, but it's never, that very well can be just my own imagination.
Uh-huh.
But what I was going to say is, what amazes me is the level of respect that Straczynski shows to religion.
Mm-hmm.
As an atheist, he's got such a deep, profound respect for religion, the different religions.
Uh-huh.
And it really is amazing and more than a little bit touching. And for me personally, speaking as a Christian, he does it in a way, and I'm speaking about some of the tendencies in Hollywood in general. Often, you see different religions being presented while there is a sort of a chop down of Christianity, and he doesn't go that route at all. He addresses the whole subject of religion with just really an incredible, profound respect.
I have to agree. That's just one of the best scenes in all of television, as far as I'm concerned.
I so completely agree with you there. It was just real brilliance.
Yes.
And I think the whole theology, philosophy discussion would really be well served if a lot of people in the world would take the kind of approach he took.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the idea, and this is what he's presenting, in some of his, and you'll see it in some other places, it's that search for truth. It's that struggle with the question of why are we here?
Right. Well, and from my point of view, and I don't want to get too deeply into this. We've had such a problem with I am right, and if you don't agree with me, you're stupid. You're going to hell. You're going to burn in hell if you don't agree with me, or whatever. People can agree to disagree. There's nothing wrong with that.
And that's what he gets right. One of the things in studying theology is all theologies, whether it's Christianity, Buddhism, Islam, Judaism, atheism, they all make certain truth claims.
Yes.
And what you just said there is we need to be able to agree to disagree.
Well, I'll tell you what, if we could, the world would sure be a lot more peaceful place.
Yeah.
Maybe we'd be able to actually move out to the stars.
Agreed. And maybe we could actually have some real debate, some real discussion to try and figure out those questions of why we're here. Let's go ahead and look at some of those truth claims.
Yes.
And let's discuss them, let's discuss them with reason. Let's not beat each other to a bloody pulp over it, whether physically or politically or spiritually or emotionally.
Of course.
And every religion has been guilty of that.
It's not going to result in anything but a whole lot of dead people.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't think there has been any religious conflict that has said, okay, well, more of us live than them, so we're right and they're wrong.
Yeah.
Because the people that lose the war still hold their own beliefs. They just don't have the power to fight back anymore.
Mm-hmm. That's more or less, and for me, I take a personal affront to parts of that because there's been so many, in name at least, Christians, I mean, all the way back to Pope Gregory, that take that kind of an approach and completely ignore the actual message that Jesus brought us.
Yeah.
But like I said, I don't want to get, I don't want to get into this isn't a venue. This isn't a venue to proselytize or, do a sermon and give an all or anything like that. But
right.
Straczynski just does a brilliant job, though, of addressing this issue. And he's going to do this a couple of times further along as well.
Oh, yes.
Passing through Gethsemane, I cry when I see that episode.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, this one always makes me shed a tear, no matter how many times I see it. Well, I think we've covered everything.
I absolutely think we did. And, I will have to say, speaking of the first of the best, we've got another one of the best coming up next week. We get a major piece of Earth's, what's the word I'm looking for? We get a major piece of Earth's politics introduced in Mind War.
Yes. Mind War will be, yes, that's very good. You do mean in 2 weeks, though, right?
Yes, you're right, because we are releasing these every other week for now. I am hoping that at some point we'll be able to get it up to once a week. My life and world is starting to settle finally.
Ah, I should be good for a little while.
Uh-huh. So, any closing thoughts?
Not for me. How about you?
Not for me. We've covered everything in this episode.
Go ahead.
I'm sure some of our listeners have some thoughts of their own, and I really would love to hear their feedback and their opinions.
I would say that the best place to send it would be the Babylon Project Podcast at gmail.com.
Absolutely. Or they can look us up on the Facebook page.
Yep.
I think that should be getting some more excitement as well.
Yes. Or find our page on WordPress, and you can leave specifically comments on this episode for sure. So, Raul, was there a boom today?
No boom today. Boom tomorrow.
There's always
a boom tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
You got it. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Podcast terminated. Thank you for listening to the Babylon Project podcast. You can email Raul and Jim at the Babylon Project podcast at gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook at the Babylon Project Podcast. On the internet, we are at babylonprojectpodcast.wordpress.com. To subscribe to the podcast, you can find us on iTunes, or you can subscribe to the RSS feed on the webpage.